families, and welcome to our brand new unit, Artrageous, and we are discovering the love of God. And let me tell you, boys and girls, this is our Easter series, and it is one of my favorites. So we're going to begin, like we do each new series, with a review of the Bible. So I have some beautiful artistic pictures here on my pad, and I'm going to do our Bible review, and when I pause, I want you to try to fill in the word for me, okay? So here we go. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Good job. And everything was perfect between God and Adam and Eve until they ruined it with sin. I hope you said sin. Yes, Adam and Eve ate from the forbidden tree, right? Okay. And then God had a plan to defeat sin. And so he made a special relationship with a family called the Israelites, right? And we know that the father of the Israelites was Abraham. All right. So God's special family, the Israelites, actually became a nation while they were in Egypt, where they were slaves. So they go to Egypt as guests, and they're a family. While they're in Egypt, they grow and grow and grow and become a nation of people, and the Pharaoh enslaves the Israelites. But God had a plan, right? And so we know that God had sent Moses to set his people free, and by doing so, he had to part the waters of the Red Sea. I hope you said sea. And once they parted the waters of those Red Sea, they went to a special place called the Promised Land, right? The land that God had promised to Abraham so many years ago. And while they're in the Promised Land, God would send messengers. These messengers were called prophets. And those prophets would go to God's people, the Israelites, and tell them to stop sinning. Yes, while they were in the Promised Land, the people of God would frequently turn from God's law and just do their own thing, really. And so he would send messengers called prophets and say, stop your sinning, turn back to God. Oh, and in the future, there's going to be a Savior born through our special family. Those were the messages of the prophets. And then 400 years of silence. 400 years. God didn't send any more messages. There were no more prophets. And then this tiny baby was born, and his name was Jesus. Yeah, Jesus was born in a stable and laid in a manger. Yes. All right, boys and girls. Jesus, once he became an adult, he spent 3 years talking to people. He traveled all over Judea, and he taught people on how to live. He taught people about the kingdom of God. He performed miracles. He healed people. And we are starting our Bible story today, right at the end of those 3 years. As we're entering our Easter season, we are going to do the Bible stories right around the time of Jesus' death and resurrection. So, hang on, here we go. Families, and welcome to week 1 of Artrageous, Discovering the Love of Jesus. This is our Easter series this year, and I'm so excited to teach it to you. Now, as we mentioned in the review, we have not been going through the life of Jesus. We did a whole unit just on the tension between Jesus and the Pharisees that's been building between them. The last unit we did was just on the power of Jesus and all these amazing miracles that he performed for us in the New Testament. And we are getting very, very close to the end of Jesus' life. And so we're going to talk today about one last miracle he did right before he went to Jerusalem, and hopefully you know what happens, but if not, you'll learn it in a few weeks. So we're actually going to be talking about a Bible story that we referenced a few weeks ago. And this is the super cool thing of the Bible, is that you can read the same passage multiple times and learn something new and different each time. So we're going to have the kind of a similar or same Bible story, but a completely different lesson. So maybe you remember a few weeks ago, we talked to you about a woman who washed Jesus' feet with her tears, dried her feet with his hair, and then put perfume, anointed his feet with perfume. And the Pharisees hated it. They hated it because anointing a person with perfume was kind of like a sign of deep respect and almost something you would just do for a king or royalty. And they did not want anyone to esteem to Jesus to that level. And they didn't like the respect and the sign that was given that she did that. Well, her name was Mary. And maybe you remember the Bible story where Jesus went to go visit two sisters, Martha and Mary. And Martha was the one that was real busy and trying to fix food for everybody and trying to get the beds ready for everybody. And Mary sat at the feet of Jesus. That was the same Mary that washed his feet and anointed his feet. And so Jesus has a history with Mary and Martha. They are his friends. Okay? And so Jesus at the time, I'm in John chapter 11, and I have my Bible out with me today, boys and girls, because there's certain passages I want to read that I want to make sure I get exactly right. Okay, so Jesus, he's in Jerusalem with his disciples. Mary, Martha, and their brother Lazarus live in Bethany, which is a village a couple of miles outside of town. And Lazarus gets very, very ill. And so Jesus, they send a messenger to Jesus and said, hey, our brother is sick. And Jesus waits a couple days, and then he walks to Bethany. And as he's starting to go, the disciples are like, wait, Jesus, the last time you tried to go to that area, they tried to stone you, like kill you by throwing stones at you until you were dead. And Jesus says, you know what, my friend is ill, and I'm gonna go to Bethany, and it will be okay. And he tries to tell them, he sends them like this little message where he says like, hey, our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep. I'm gonna go there to wake him up. And they're like, oh my word, he's asleep. Why do we even have to bother going if he's asleep? He'll just get better. So Jesus says it very plainly to them since they don't figure it out. He says, Lazarus is dead. And for your sake, I'm glad I was not there so that you may believe. Now that might sound a little weird, boys and girls, but what Jesus is saying is, Lazarus is dead, and I'm going to do something so radical and so amazing and so powerful that you will finally believe I am who I say I am, right? And so that's what he did. He starts walking to Bethany. And one of the disciples, Thomas, says, let us go along so that we may die with him. So literally, the disciples are following Jesus to the house of Mary, Martha, and Lazarus, and they believe we're probably all gonna die because they're gonna come after us again, right? So they go, and he meets Martha along the way. He's not quite to the house yet, and Martha was like, Lord, if you'd have just come sooner, like my brother would have been healed. I know you could have healed him, but he's already been dead for 4 days. And Jesus says, hey, he'll rise again. And she says, well, yeah, I know at the end of times, on the last day, he'll rise again. And he says, no, I am the life and the resurrection. And anyone who believes in me will not die. And he says, do you believe this, Martha? And she says, yes, Lord, I believe it. Ooh, those are some powerful words. So Martha goes and tells her sister Mary, hey, Jesus is here. And so Mary and all her followers, like she had a group of people that were trying to comfort her, which is very common. Like when someone you love dies, people come over and they try to give you comfort. And so Mary walks out to where Jesus is at, and the people that have been trying to give her comfort walk out to where Jesus is at. And Mary, the Bible tells us, is crying. In fact, all the people that are traveling with Mary are also crying. And so here in John chapter 11, it says, when Jesus saw her weeping, and the others who had come along with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in spirit and troubled. And he said, where have you laid him? And she says, come and see, Lord. And then the shortest verse of the Bible, like the smallest verse in the entire Bible, John 11:35, Jesus wept. No, boys and girls, Jesus didn't weep because Lazarus was dead. He already knew Lazarus was dead. He told the disciples earlier in the day, before they traveled to Bethany, that Lazarus was dead. He told the disciples, hey, I'm going to do something so powerful that you're going to believe in me. Jesus is weeping because Mary is weeping. Jesus is weeping because her friends are weeping. See, there's this word, boys and girls, that I want you to learn today. And this word is called compassion. And compassion literally means to suffer with. That's what it means. So Mary was suffering because she was so sad that her brother had died. Their friends were suffering because their friend Lazarus had died. And Jesus wept. He suffered with them. He took their sadness as his own, and he suffered with them. Okay, we're going to keep going. So they take Jesus to where Lazarus is buried. He tells them to move the stone away from the tomb. And they're like, Jesus, he's been dead 4 days. You don't want to do this. It's going to smell terrible. And Jesus says, move it anyway. And Jesus stands at the edge of the tomb and he says, Lazarus, right? He says, come out. And he does. Lazarus walks out. And Jesus says, hey, take off his grave clothes and let him go. Because he would have been like wrapped up in linen, kind of like, imagine, kind of like a mummy, but they would have taken strips of linen and wrapped up the body. So Jesus says, take off those clothes, those rags, and, let him go. And so Lazarus comes alive. And it's really awesome because we learn right then and there that Jesus has the power to raise someone from the dead, right? He's raised the little girl from the dead, and now he's raised Lazarus from the dead, and not like the same day, like the little girl was dead, a couple hours. Lazarus has been dead 4 days. And I love that picture because it just affirms that Jesus was dead and God was able to bring him back to life. But the story gets a little tense and a little crazy and kind of leads up to the Easter story. So I kind of want to make sure I get this right, boys and girls. But it's so interesting. At the end of John chapter 11, like verse 45, like way down, the plot to kill Jesus begins. Okay, so here's what happened. Because so many people saw what he did with Lazarus, even more people started believing in Jesus. And so the Pharisees, they call this special meeting, right? They call this special meeting and they decide that Jesus has to die. Because they're afraid that the people will start a revolution and start fighting against Rome. They don't want Rome to rule them anymore. They wanted Jesus to be their new king. They wanted Jesus to lead an army against Rome. And so the Pharisees said, it's better for one man to die than for the people or the whole nation to die. And so they're like, we're going to kill Jesus so that he doesn't try to become king. And here's the ironic part is that Jesus didn't even want to be king. Jesus wanted to tell them about the kingdom of God. He didn't want to be a king here on earth. But they even said in here, right here it says in verse 48, if it keeps going on like this, everyone will believe in him, and the Romans will come and take away our place in our nation. See, the Pharisees were just concerned about their power and their place in the Israelite nation, and they wanted to hold on to that power, and they knew in order to do that Jesus had to die. And so at this point, they put out an arrest warrant for Jesus, and they say, if anybody sees Jesus, you come and tell us, we're going to arrest him. And Jesus, it said, has to go into hiding. So, boys and girls, we're going to cut it off there. And next week, the story gets a little darker and a little deeper, and we're going to hear more about how the Pharisees are after Jesus and trying to arrest Jesus. It's going to be intense. We will see you in the studio. Hey, Kristen.
What's up, Rachel?
Well,
listen, I'm ready for another game this week. A game that I can win.
well, I love to design games that no one wins.
Yeah, I know. Oh, I know.
But this is Artrageous. So we are using art to discover the love of Jesus.
Oh,
so I wrote a craft for you.
That's
like,
fun.
How church of me, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so on this paper, I have like a template of a teardrop.
Okay.
And we're going to do a little activity. We're going to write things on the teardrop that made us sad when we were kids.
Oh,
so I'm
okay,
gonna
so
go
we're
first.
throwing it back.
Throwing it back. Okay. Because it probably is similar to things that make kids sad today. Yes. So for me, a big one was when I was on the playground, a lot of times I was left out and kids would be like, no, you can't play with us. You can't play with us. And
You
so.
can't join us.
Yes. So being left out and feeling like you have no one to play with.
Yes.
Yes. And so that made me very sad. There were days I came home from school crying.
Tears.
because of what happened on the playground. It was rough.
That's awful. Let me think here. Ooh, I got one. When I didn't win something when I was younger, I used to get super, super sad.
You're so nice, Kristen, that people probably don't realize how competitive you are.
I am very competitive.
Yeah.
And I didn't get angry. I would get
sad.
Get very sad.
Okay, well, believe it or not, when I was younger, I used to get into trouble quite a bit. And instead of like acknowledging and claiming my bad choices got me into trouble, I would be like, my mom and dad don't love me.
Okay.
My brother never gets in trouble.
No one likes me.
Yeah.
Yep.
But the issue was my brother made better choices. And so I didn't realize that when I was a kid. I just thought, I'm so sad because my parents don't love me as much as they love Chris.
All right, let me think here. Ooh, fighting with siblings.
Yes.
Or like when your siblings are mean to you, or when like my little brother was mean to me. I'm sure I was mean back to him at some point.
Yeah.
But it used to make me sad.
And I know Kristen just said her little brother, but her little brother is actually a lot bigger in stature.
He's very tall.
He's like your little brother.
I have to remind him of the birth order thing sometimes.
Yeah, so you're probably like, Kristen, you were the bigger one. But
it
really doesn't matter if your sibling is older or younger. It's sad when they're mad at you or mean to you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I'm going to put one here for everyone, right?
This is a big one.
COVID disappointment. Because there's so many things this year that we wanted to do and planned on doing, and then it got canceled or
throughout like the whole
shortened,
year.
or we had to do it standing really far away, or you'd be excited about a birthday party canceled, or a sports league canceled, or I'm gonna go back to school, and then you're exposed and you have to quarantine for 10 to 14 days, and just a lot of disappointment that was very sad this year.
Very true.
Okay, well, would you cut out this while we talk about the Bible verse?
Okay.
Thank you. All right, so boys and girls, we learned in our story today that Jesus wept. It's the shortest verse in the Bible. Jesus wept.
It's a good one to memorize.
Time 11:35.
Super short.
But he didn't weep because Lazarus was dead. Because he already said earlier in John 11 that Lazarus was dead and he was going to do something really powerful to make people believe in him. And so he brought him back to life. Like, he already knew that was going to happen. He wept because Mary was sad. He wept because her friends were weeping. And Jesus had compassion on them. I don't know if you guys remember from large group what compassion means, but compassion means to suffer with. So if you're sad, I suffer with you by being sad with you.
And that's being compassionate.
Yes. All right, so here's our Bible verse. It's from Psalm, the book of Psalm, and it says, my tears have been my food day and night. Like, that's a really bad day. This guy has been crying all day long. And some of you might be like, oh, I never cry. But he's not ashamed or too big or too old. He's crying. It says, when I remember what has happened, I tell God all of my troubles. Ding, 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 ding. That's the ticket. That's what we learn from the story of Lazarus from this point of view, is that we're supposed to tell God all of our troubles. We tell him our sadness, and he is sad with us. But it gets better than that. Like, not only is he sad with us, like, what did he do after he wept with Mary? He went and he raised Lazarus back from the dead.
A miracle.
So imagine the joy that people experienced after their sadness. And so Jesus might not, like, abracadabra fix your sadness, but he wants to give you joy again, right? And he wants to take away the sadness. And even though the thing that caused you to be sad might still be occurring and still be happening, he wants to replace your sadness with
joy.
With joy.
With joy.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So tell us what we need to do about the teardrop.
So here is like our family challenge for you guys at home. Because it's Artrageous, we're going to encourage you guys to make your own art project. So you can make your own little teardrop if you have blue paper, white paper, whatever, and you can write down the things that make you sad. And then we want them to pray about these things. So tell God about what makes you sad, because he loves you and he cares about you and he wants to bring you peace and joy.
Yes. And next week, I think the only supply you'll need is a printer. We will email you the little project and a pair of scissors.
Super simple.
So, yep, that's it.
We'll see you guys next week.